Hi, thank you. Good morning, Nikki Randall from Georgia. I heard Nick mention the farm team. I had a conversation with several people last night about our bench. Our bench is weak. And I guess the question is, how do we build our bench? In Georgia, when you look at our congressional delegation, the Republicans are young. They're, maybe the oldest is maybe 55, 60. But on our side, you would think you're at a long-term care convention. And I'm not being ugly. I'm 44. I've done 17 years in the state house, and I'm going to retire. Partly because 44-year-olds can't afford to work part-time and work full-time and be paid part-time. How do we build our bench? How do we get people that are young enough to have a career upward, maybe even to Congress or wherever? How do we keep our bench young, fresh, innovative, and strong?
It's a great question. I think there's several things that come to my mind. First is, when you're working with groups, particularly community-based groups, organizers, look for talent there. Those people are extremely talented at talking to people, at connecting to people, organizing people. There's talent there. Think about recruiting some of those people up. One other thing is, make government something that they want to be a part of, legislating something that they want to be a part of. A great story that I hope you'll hear is out of Oklahoma. One of the representatives, Jason Dunnington, is here. We did a equal pay, they were part of our equal pay campaign last year. And there was a bill that was introduced the year prior. There was an equal pay bill that was killed immediately when it was introduced. But last year, in part of our partnership, that bill passed both legislative chambers. And that was not only important that it passed both chambers, but it was important because Representative Dunnington started getting calls from people saying, we can actually do something progressive here? That's interesting. I'm excited about that. I want to be involved with that. And you can do that. So start talking about things that inspire people. Get them to want to run for office. And then on the flip side, when we were starting SIX, one of the things we did was we had conversations with hundreds of elected officials around the country. One of the things that we heard literally hundreds of times was that we get trained and recruited when we're running for office, but when we're in office, we don't have the resources we need to be as effective as we can. So it's also investing in groups like SIX who we can come and help provide those resources and help do the things, some of the things I mentioned. So those are some of the things that come to mind.
Thanks, Nick, and thanks to our presenters this morning. I want to follow up on that point. The first SIX conference, which I attended, I spoke to you, Nick, about the idea of engaging young people in this, and I think it's fantastic. My question for you is, how can we encourage millennials to participate in the process of government when so many in the party, including our keynote speaker this morning, blame millennials for what just happened in the election? I can't help but feel like that's an incredibly counterproductive strategy for us.
I agree with that. The last thing we need to do is bash anyone, and particularly millennials who are young, who are, you all remember when you were young. I remember when I was young. I'm old now, believe me. That the thing to do is to speak to them where they're at. And I know you know better than anyone, and I would love to figure out ways to bring them into the fold, into SIX, particularly younger, newly elected people like we had here yesterday, and who are in the audience today, about ways to connect through social media, through again inspiring them that government is a place to be, that you want to be, and not just fight against. So I think some of those things, some of those tactics, but I would love to hear more throughout this conversation about ideas that you have for us in ways that we can connect to the younger generation, and as well as other people in the audience. Thank you.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, please.
Just quickly. Is this on? Okay. One of, I think, the problems is saying we need to get millennials out, or millennials were part of the Obama surge, as if millennials are one kind of person. Millennials are as diverse, if not more diverse, than the rest of the country. And I think part of the challenge that Democrats and progressives have had on motivating millennials is treating millennials as if they're one kind of person, that they're a white liberal man who cares about climate change. There are some millennials who are that person, but there are lots of other millennials who are like just barely scraping by, burdened with bad college debt from going to a community college and dropping out after a year and coming out of that in worse shape than before they went into school. So I think one of the things that we have to do is recognize the diversity of the millennial generation, the diversity of the concerns, the diversity of their problems, and speak to them more directly, as you say, meeting them where they are.
And quickly, and I think it'll address both questions. What we have started to do is recruit those folks, those millennials, to volunteer, to intern, to be paid staffers, whatever we can do to get them in, and that way they learn what's effective, because they have some ideas that we share, but they don't necessarily know how to accomplish it. And if we make them a part of it, we can get them to buy in, because they're around, they're not going anywhere, and they're going to run either with us or they're going to run against us. And so the more that we can get them to be a part of that and learn how to be effective with it by volunteering and working, then I think the more likely we can use that to expand our base and get them to understand how to be effective in what they're advocating for.
Good morning. Representative G.A. Hardaway, Tennessee. I serve as the National Black Caucus of State Legislators co-chair for our Census and Redistricting Committee. There are several initiatives that the National Black Caucus of State Legislators has underway that we'd love to partner with SIX on. We need some funding, we need some research, analyticals, data. All of that would be helpful in the way that we plan to operate and getting that same idea that you have. We've already been working on it, and that's getting the farm team together on the local races, getting the redistricting for our city councils, our school boards, our county commissions, and building that team, but also building that network of voters and getting the ideas that they need to hear that directly impact their quality of life ingrained into them, so we're not chasing them at election time. They already know what's going on. So I'd be interested in knowing what your outreach has been. And I look around the room, I see at least 10, 12 Black Caucus members that came here directly from New Orleans in order to participate and support this project. But we would also like to know that it will be reciprocated and you'll be supporting the National Black Caucus of State Legislators. Thank you.
Yes, we definitely will. It's a big priority of ours. And in fact, I don't know if you've met him yet, but we just hired Mandela Barnes, former legislator in Wisconsin. He's back there. His job is to work with you all and make sure that we're connected to you all. And same with me. I know Mandela was down there. Yep. And we want to stay connected with you all. And on the question of redistricting, I think you all in this room know more than I do and know how important it is. And I have been working with the White House, with David Seamus, and you'll hear from A.G. Holder during the lunch about this new effort that President Obama is going to be undertaking post-presidency that focuses on redistricting. I'm going to serve on the advisory committee for that, so I will be connected to that. SIX is deeply invested in helping and supporting efforts around the country in that regard. And I don't know if you all want to say anything else on redistricting, or you okay? Cool. But we're with you, and there's nothing more critical in my mind than the next 4 years in getting us to a place where we haven't just written off the House of Representatives for another decade. We have time for 2 more questions.
Good morning. My name is Nicole Collier from Texas. I want to ask Speaker Frierson, I want to follow up on that question that you talked about creating a long-term vision for your party, and then you talked about having a blueprint, and then Nick, you talked about how making the millennials feel a part of the government. And I think, what did you guys do? What did you do in Nevada? Was it when you created your vision? Did you create it with the state party? Was it with your legislative caucus, or was it with your local parties? And then how did you get them to get on the same agenda and how to execute it? Because that's what I see what's happening in Texas, is that we've got all these levels and everybody, has a general idea. We all have a progressive agenda, but then it's how to execute it and how to decide which one should be the top goal.
Thank you. I'll say in Nevada, we actually, right after the election in 2014, started polling specifically for that purpose, to find out post-election what voters were thinking about and make that part of our message and our platform moving forward. We collaborated with the party, the coordinated campaign, both houses. We all got together right after the election and said, let's start collecting data. So we did some polling. We had some partners that helped us, did some polling. Unfortunately, because I lost, the fortunate thing is I could use campaign proceeds that I had to dispense with to help that cause. And so we did polling post-election. We're going to actually do a Blueprint Point 2 or 2.0 after this last election, because we didn't anticipate that result. And so we would expect that voters have a significantly different view of what is going to be important moving forward. So we'll do the new polling and collect data and collaborate again to recognize what is resonating with voters and make that part of our platform and our message moving forward as a legislative effort.
We have time for one last question.
Hi, thanks. Alana Rubel from the Idaho House of Representatives. I have kind of a similar question. I'm really inspired by what you were able to do in Nevada. I am desperately hoping that we can do something like that in Idaho, so I want to just tap everything that you did. But I'm really curious more about that non-election year. What you were able to do that was really effective, with those that were still in office, if there was anything special you did with, priming the electorate with your legislators that were in office, if you did anything with, voter registration, what did you do during that non-election year to really set yourself up for the wins that you had this year?
Thank you. One of the things that I was able to do, because I wasn't in office and I was still able to be on the ground back in our districts, is we had a significant digital campaign during the session to tell everybody what was going on. Our capital is some 500 miles away from Las Vegas and Clark County, where the bulk of our state's population is, and oftentimes they check out and they don't really know, unless it's really front page, what's going on. So because we had a significant digital effort, we maintained communication with voters during that off cycle, and we had started in the past and are beefing up now a incumbent protection plan that will continue to send out mail and to do digital to keep in touch with those voters moving forward, and it's been tremendously effective. I'll also say that we decided to make it a priority. We had never had a communications director before, and towards that effort to maintain that contact with voters, we decided to create a position as communications director so that we could continue to have that dialogue and continue to have ideas from somebody who knows more about digital than I do, about how to connect with people on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, in a way that resonated with them and was targeted to them and their representative. And so with the digital targeting, you can figure out where people are accessing the internet and target a message directly to them. And that way they know what their representative is doing, or what, if they have a Republican representative, what they're doing that they would not likely be in favor of. And we use that to develop our message so that when the session ended, we just kept rolling where we left off.
Thank you. Please give a round of applause for our speakers.